Now let's come back down to earth with a real bump, because tomorrow the Joburg City Council will have another go at electing a new mayor. On Tuesday, endless behind-the-scenes caucusing led to a stalemate, with parties not agreed on which candidates to put forward. Now, on the one hand, the ANC seems locked into an agreement with the EFF to nominate candidates from smaller parties for the top job. But there's even unhappiness within the ANC about that. Quite a few councillors apparently saying they should actually put forward former Mayor Dada Morero. Then on the other hand, the DA has angered previous coalition partners by insisting on putting forward former Mayor Mpho Phalatse, while Action SA wants their man Funzi Ngubeni. And in the centre of it all, the likely kingmakers, the Patriotic Alliance with their crucial 8 seats. So let's discuss this now with political analyst and host of Power to Truth here on ENCA, Prof JJ Tabane. Prof, thanks so much for joining us. And we were chatting in the newsroom about this, and I joked with you that you were allowed to start this interview with your famous words, "It's a mess." But it really is a mess, isn't it?
It's a big bloody mess. But let me tell you what's good about it. They are debating amongst themselves about how to untangle the mess. It would have been different if they just went along with what they had agreed before, which is, or just take another person from Al Jama and let's hope for the best. So I think that the fact that they are debating amongst themselves, as you were saying in your intro, even within the ANC, to say, really, is this our best foot forward for a city as big and important as Joburg to our economy? So for me, while it's a mess, I think it's in a sense a good sign that they are deadlocked over what needs to happen, because often when there are such contradictions, that's where a better solution can come out, rather than if people just go with the flow.
Yeah. Let's focus in on the ANC, because I think it was this last weekend the ANC came out and said, look, this is how we're going to run coalitions. And they committed to, they said, really what we want to see is the biggest party being in charge. But now they seem to be saying, well, let's elect another, and let's say it, a puppet mayor, someone who isn't well known, who doesn't have a governor's track record, from a smaller party, essentially to keep the peace with the EFF. And at the same time, we're hearing that there's a lot of unhappiness within the ANC on the ground. They want Dada Morero, who's got the chops to do this job. What are you hearing?
Look, the fact that there was that full discussion at the NEC meant that the ANC was aware that the manner in which they approached coalition, especially in Gauteng, where there's been lots of controversies thereabout, was an incorrect way to go about it. And if it were to be a template for national election, would be in a big disaster, which means that every other 3 months you could have a new president, which really would not bode well for our country's image, both at home and abroad. So this NEC meeting was then set up new parameters, and I don't want to go into full detail of it, but what's important to take away from there is what you've just said, that the ANC would have to look at every coalition in terms of who is leading, in terms of which party has the majority, even if it's within a minority, so to speak, or they haven't gotten 50%. And then use that as a template to say where we've got a majority, we then must insist on being in the lead. In other words, where it comes to mayoral candidates, we will do so. But we know the ANC is not known for implementing its own resolutions very much. And this is a clear test case of whether or not the decision they made a week ago, they can now implement it. At the heart of that decision is a nervousness within the ANC that the ANC in Gauteng has too close ties with the EFF, and that's not sitting well with some of the leadership. In fact, just last week when we had a show with various political leaders, the ANC would not even give permission for some of the hotel leaders to come and talk to us, because apparently they were trying to tighten the screws around who says what in as far as some of the controversial issues are concerned. So that's really what is happening now. And what is anticipated is that the Secretary General will put his foot down to say, this is what the ANC has decided, and so we cannot follow the Al Jama model, so to speak, and put another disastrous mayor there.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that's going to be welcome, honestly. Let's look at the DA. They've managed to annoy their former coalition partners, chief among them Action South Africa, because the DA is saying, well, Mpho Phalatse is it. ASA is saying you're getting orders from Cape Town, but you're not, the DA on the ground, a similar issue to perhaps with the ANC, they are prepared to be, more compromising. And this is the ongoing criticism of the DA, that they're just too high-handed. ASA now saying they're going to put forward Funzi Ngobela. But I just wonder, Ngobeni, who's going to blink first? Because it seems that ultimately Action SA and DA, they need each other for this to be anything significant. How do you think this particular issue is going to shape up?
Well, it's quite obvious that if the DA and Action SA don't agree on a candidate, it means that they're going to split their votes. Yeah. And there aren't too many votes going around, So that means that both of them will lose. So who's going to blink? Whoever blinks first doesn't matter. The issue is that as long as they fill two candidates, they are already going to have a subtraction of the votes that could have gone to one. And of course, this is not just a blame that should be put on the door of the Action SA or DA, but both of them are truly not showing extreme maturity on this one. Starting with the DA. The DA left Mpho Phalatse to basically be on the streets when she was taken out of office. She had to go and fight her own fight in courts and so on. They had already said to her, even before the court decided that she should go back, that, why don't you become a premier candidate, in 2024, leave this thing alone. So there's never been a commitment from their side to fight step by step with her to keep that coalition in place. They refused to work with the EFF, which could have easily made sure that they keep that seat. So there was no big vision about saying that let's compromise, bring in the PA, bring in the IFP, and make sure that the DA can continue to govern. And so if this is going to happen in terms of the so-called moonshot pact, you can expect a disaster. In fact, I think that pact is already failing in its first test case of a big city like the city of Johannesburg.
And then I was speaking to Wayne Sussman earlier this week, and he says he believes that the Patriotic Alliance, with their 8 seats, going to be the kingmakers, that ultimately we'll see the ANC and the EFF working together, DA, Action SA and the others working together, 2 blocks, and it's going to ultimately be decided by who successfully woos the Patriotic Alliance. Do you agree with that view?
I agree. I mean, the Patriotic Alliance has already made it very clear that they will work with the EFF and ANC bloc. But the DA has also made it clear that they don't want to work with the Patriotic Alliance unless the Patriotic Alliance distances itself from the ANC. Now, if you understand Gayton McKenzie and that crew, you're not going to get them to be instructed by someone outside the PA on who to talk to, who not to talk to. The DA itself has not distanced itself from the ANC. They have never said so. They were very happy to distance themselves from the EFF in all pomp and ceremony at their Congress. But they didn't say the same about the ANC. But they expect the PA to go and do that. So that this is truly somebody has to advise the DA urgently about what it would take for them to actually lead an enough, or rather a serious enough pact to take the ANC out of power. At the rate they're going, all they have done is to make it even more possible for the ANC to somehow end up in power by pushing the EFF to the ANC, right? By saying we don't want to work with the EFF, but also at the same time pushing away other parties that are having a good relationship with the EFF, not to work with them, because it looks like, oh, you can't choose blue. If you choose red, please choose blue only. So I think that this is a chaos that, if you look at it, it's going to plunge the country that is looking for an alternative into a serious crisis where the ANC will end up in power by default just because the opposition couldn't get their head together.
So a really interesting test case, the city of Johannesburg, for what may develop next year. We're certainly going to be watching. Let's see if by this time tomorrow, Johannesburg has a mayor who actually has the credentials to do the job, who knows what they're going to be doing,
Yeah.
and is up for it. We will have to wait and see, I guess. Thank you so much. That, of course, is political
Absolutely.
analyst and host of Power to Truth here on ENCA, Professor JJ Tabane, just talking to us about what might or might not happen in the city of Johannesburg tomorrow. Now,